All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name's Jennifer Wegeman, and I'm one of the trainers at WorkNet DuPage Career Center. And what we have to offer you are a lot of job search resources and training. And I'll have my manager, Jim Fergal, explain a little bit more about our services in just a moment. I just wanted to say good morning, happy Friday, TGIF. Hope you're doing well and staying safe. I know it's been a strange situation for everybody. Everybody's dealing with different things. So hopefully we can come together every Friday at 9 a.m. You're more than welcome to drop in. We've got a lot of great topics lined up for you, and we'll share those in a moment too. When you're looking for a job, you really are vulnerable to scammers. So we don't want you to let the stress of looking for a job take over and make you vulnerable to scams. So we're going to show you some examples and also give you some tips on how to avoid these on-the-spot offers or payments required for opportunities or training. So we'll get started in just a minute. I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Jim Fergal.
Okay, Jennifer, do you have the next slide?
Yeah, hold on one second. Can you see it?
There you go. Thank you, Jennifer. My name is Jim Fergal. I am the facilitator of the Job Club and also manager of Job Seeker and Veteran Services at WorkNet DuPage. We are funded from Congress through the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, or WIOA. It's a grant. We do have applications online at worknetdupage.org. If you have been laid off during the COVID-19 crisis, we have a special link there for you for the application. And if you were laid off before, then we have another application. Some of the services we offer, as Jennifer mentioned, we have a virtual job club every Friday at 9 o'clock. We have some great speakers and presentations coming up, which we'll talk about at the end, but we have Connor Kineen next week and staying motivated during the job search. The following week, I'll be talking about getting ready, Plan, Research, Act. Then we have how to find federal jobs. We also offer job search workshops for people who are registered with us, working with a career counselor, either going to school or in our career services. We take you through the whole job search process with specialized workshops as well. The big thing is we have training grants up to $10,000 for registered clients, those who qualify. Anything from CDL to Scrum, Agile Scrum Master, healthcare occupations. So we have a variety of training grants. Every Tuesday at 9 o'clock, we also have a layoff to launch workshop. So if you've been laid off, you can sign up for those through our website as well. So visit our website again, worknetdupage.org. If you have questions, you can type them in the chat. But visit our website and you can fill out the application, and you can also see the scheduled events coming up. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks, Jim. All right, we're going to go ahead and go into the next slide. So what we're going to cover today is job scams and why you need to keep your antenna up. We have a lot of things happening right now. It's kind of a trifecta with the pandemic, high unemployment, there's a census going on, there's stimulus payments. So it just seems like all this stuff is in favor of the scammers to keep you in fear and uncertainty, and that makes you do things sometimes that you normally wouldn't do. So we've got a lot of resources that we'll share with you to learn how to stay safe and avoid getting slammed by these scams. So watch out when you're looking for a job. You can often be promised a lot of different things by different people that you really don't know, and you need to verify who they are, and they may want to charge you, which is never something you should do when you're looking for a job. There's no need to pay anyone. They can't guarantee you a job. So there's no need to pay anyone because you'll lose your money. And that's not what anybody wants right now. So job seekers are targeted because often people are, you know, trying to comply. They're trying to follow directions. There's going to be a lot of people asking you for information. And often that can be personal, private information. And you don't often question who's asking for it. You may just have a phone conversation and they're right away asking for private information or PPI, which would include your social security number, your address, your phone, date of birth, bank and account information. And there's not that many pieces of information that they need to complete some kind of identity theft or hack into your bank or possibly steal your unemployment benefits. We'll talk about that in a minute. Just a lot of fun stuff today for a Friday. But we want you to be aware of it. So the reason job seekers, again, are targeted is that you're looking for opportunities. You're busy. You're out there. You're being told to upload your resume on these job boards, which are very open and easily accessible to a lot of nefarious characters, unfortunately, even though the actual job boards, you know, are trying to match you up with employers. Sometimes people pose as fake employers and then they grab your information, call you, email you, text you, and you're kind of swept up in that because you think it's coming from a legitimate source. So you're talking to a lot of different people, trying to keep track of what you're doing. You know, there's a lot going on in everybody's life, but when you're in job search, it's even more crazy. So we get that, and that's why we want you to get your guard up. So when you're in job search, oh, the other thing I wanted to mention was, you know, a lot of people are posting things on these social media platforms, their names, their anniversaries, their family members, so people can identify who you are, and they have created very elaborate scams. And I'll mention Barbara Cochran from Shark Tank. She was scammed not once, but twice. And luckily her accountant caught and double checked what was happening. But I'll give you some more information if you want to hear about that in a podcast that I'll share with you as a reference. But it was very elaborate. And of course, she's well known and she has a lot of information out there because she is a famous celebrity. But it was really creative. And these people are not dumb. They're just, they're very sneaky is the word, I guess, with a capital S. So you want to be careful what you post. And you don't want to share too much information with too many open settings, because people can very easily see just enough information to make you think that you know them, that you're some contact that they are okay to talk to, and that's not good. So you also may get hired. This could happen at any time, and you're in the new job, you're getting new information coming at you. It's a lot to kind of get ramped up, and you may see an email. Well, don't be the person that's going to take down the network. It's not a memorable way to be remembered. So you want to be careful about data breaches, because usually it starts with just one person opening some kind of malicious software, and it goes into their servers, and then they can hack into different systems, and it's just a bad mess. So don't respond, just delete. And we'll talk more about this as well. There's a lot of scams out there. Unfortunately, I only have about an hour because we could talk about a lot of different scams, but the one I want to talk about the most are employment scams, although I'm going to touch on a few different scams just to make you aware, because they all have kind of an underlying theme. They're trying to get you to agree to stuff so that they can either take your money, cause you problems with identity, which is a big nightmare, as many of you probably have found out. And you just want to be very careful about who you're dealing with, especially when you're in an unemployment situation, because there's a lot you're doing, as we said. So many of the scams I'm going to share with you, these are typical job scams and different employment scams, and they're very creative. And as you'll see over time, employment scams have become more and more prevalent because they know that that's a vulnerable population of people that are really online, very active, looking for work, and will respond. But don't get hooked. Phishing is something that will make it look like it's, a real organization, or it's a valid employment opportunity. The emails look pretty close, but there might be red flags. And so I'm going to show you an example. This was actually a client of ours. She came up to me after one of our workshops, and she said, and it was on her phone, which I don't know about you, but it's hard for me to see maybe as clearly than if it was on my laptop. It just might not stand out as much because it's a smaller screen. I don't know if that's true for you guys, but you may want to just slow down and take a look at things. But I'm going to show you this in just a second, the screen that she shared with me. So I'll show you that in just a second. So this was very interesting. This Texas man, there's a video here, and due to our logistics, I'm not going to be able to show that to you today, but you can certainly click on the link in the PDF when you receive it. And I encourage you to watch the video. It's only about 2 minutes, but this man was, legitimately trying to find a real job. He was led to believe there was a job. He was sent a check and told to deposit the check. Well, guess what? The check bounced, and now his bank wants him to pay. So these are the challenges you have when you rely, it seems legitimate. And so you'll see his story. It was kind of a good example of some advance payment type scams that are pretty common. So then the fraud scam maps, you may want to take a look at these as well, because just this week I was able to pull some scams off of people had reported these scams. And what they do is they have a map, and it's all over the United States. And the scams are highlighted so that you're aware of what's happening in your area. So it shows the postal code, and how much money was lost. Some people didn't lose money, but they wasted a lot of time. And I don't know about you, but I like to be efficient. My time is very valuable to me. And once it's gone, it's gone. So you don't want to be caught up in a whole lot of time spent on these different scams. So I'm just going to read one that I thought, I'll read a couple of these actually, because they were pretty brief the way they described it, and I think you'll get the idea. I was looking for payroll jobs hiring on Google, and one was on the list named Next Era Energy Payroll Clerk. It was a job posted on Indeed. It took me to a website where I applied, and they contacted me the next day. Some man named Tony Bruce, now I know this is not the real name of the man that contacted me, he gave me an online interview through Google Chat asking me of my experiences in this field. I soon started printing out multiple labels and paychecks every day or whenever he sent them. I took them to the proper postal company on the label, either USPS, FedEx, or UPS. I was sent a batch of at least 30 checks at a time, all with no less than $5,000 on each check. Each check had different names, but eventually the same group of names ranging from 60 to 70 people would recur on these checks. I used my own money to buy the check paper, ink for my printer, and paper from Staples because he informed me that I would be reimbursed with my paycheck every month, which I was supposed to get paid $1,000 once a month. He asked me how I would like to get paid in the interview, and I said Cash App, and he agreed to it. This went on for about 2 weeks. He called me today because I was taking too long to reply to his message on Google Chat, and the phone number was a California area code. All right, so there was some more conversation there. In a full-on African accent, I said, okay, and he hung up. His picture on his Gmail is a white man smiling. I was already suspicious from the beginning, but I was also being hopeful that I wasn't about to get scammed. I put all that work in, used my own money, and used my gas to go to the shipping locations. Now, when I ask him to Cash App me the money to buy more ink and paper because I refused to use my own money again, he kept telling me to find a way to get the money because we made an agreement that I will get paid once a month, beginning 1 month from the day I started. I told him if he can't send me my money, then I already wasted my time and the money to buy those supplies, and that I can't help him. So he has my address and a picture of my driver's license. Okay, so this person unfortunately thought this was a legitimate opportunity, and she lost $60. Okay, but it was more than that. It was a lot of time. Here's another example. SGS Post finds your information for work from home job application, sends you contracts, and even calls and contacts you over the phone for interviews. They get your driver's license, phone numbers, address, banking information, and personal info, and begin sending packages to your home for you to inspect. They give you a pay date when you are supposed to receive a base pay of $1,200 plus $40 for every successfully sent package. After your pay date, they delete your account with them and stop returning calls and texts. You do not receive pay, and they have been using your information for possible fraudulent mailing. I am unsure if the items being shipped to you are stolen, fraudulent, or if I was tricked into a scam to help them scam others. Total dollars lost, $1,800. This was from postcode 29378, wherever that is. Here's one more. I've been working with a work from home company. They sent me a check for over $2,000 and I took it to my bank and they cashed it. Part of my job was to buy 4 $500 gift cards, then call them back with the numbers on the back. I'm worried this is a scam. So these are the people that are replying onto the Better Business Bureau or the AARP fraud scam. There's a database you can enter these scams in, but they're not seeing this information, unfortunately, before they agree to do these things. All right, here's one more. Received a text saying that they have seen my resume and I would be a perfect fit for the job. Pays $55,000. I did not apply for a job with this company. Wants me to fill out a form about me, my bank account for automatic deposit. I did not click on the form. Also said a client has donated money and they want me to handle it. Looked up the company. It is a charitable company based in the UK. So luckily that person didn't go forward. So as you can see, there's just a lot of stuff that people are getting caught up in and they think it's legitimate and they don't realize that they're getting involved in a scam. And they're using company names. There's another one here from Rite Aid Corporation, which is a large company that many people have heard of. And it said it was from Human Resources. They had informed the person about the jobs and the history of the company, which is, available to anybody on the internet. So this job would require me to work from home for $35 an hour. Moving forward, they are telling me they were going to send me a check for $4,416 so I could receive my home equipment. They sent the check out. I was told to check in every day of the week at 8 a.m. for work. They also asked me to send my direct deposit information So I went to my Chime bank account, and that obviously wasn't enough, so they requested I send them a picture of my ATM card. Then when this person who's reporting the scam asked to speak to HR, they said they referred him to another person named Joe Bryan. He informed me if I didn't take the job that I would get in trouble for accepting the check, and he would report me to federal agents. So then I knew it was a scam. So unfortunately, there's a lot of this going on, and as you'll see, there's lots of people that, you know, are not familiar with these different operators and how they're doing this. So that's why it's good to educate yourself. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm going back. All right, sorry about that. Okay, so how you want to protect yourself is, again, educate yourself, learn about the different types of scams, what to be wary of. And then there are, and again, you're going to have the PDF with all the links. There's a lot more information, but it's just a lot to put into a PowerPoint. So I wanted to make sure you have a resource guide that'll be at the end of the PowerPoint presentation with all the links to these agencies. The problem is that, you know, you don't often know where to report this information if you haven't thought about this before. You know, you never considered that you might be scammed. So the Federal Trade Commission is the nation's consumer protection agency, and they are the ones to report the scams to. However, you could also report it to your Attorney General for your state, the Better Business Bureau, the Fraud Watch Network, which were in the previous slide, the links to those, so that people can be aware of what's happening. I think it's a service to everyone else so that they find out what's going on. So again, you know, how do you spot the scam? Well, the best thing is to just be aware that if something looks a little fishy, that you should, you know, slow down, especially if there's some urgent activity. They want you to provide information. They might promise you a job, a government job, the secret to getting a job. Well, as you know from working with the Career Center here at WorkNet DuPage, the secret to getting a job is work. You have to work at getting a job. It doesn't happen with a quick call. You know, there's usually steps involved, and they can be verified. But especially, you know, you don't want to be taking chances, especially when you are trying to watch your income. There's a lot of things that you're worried about. You know, you don't need this on top of it. So don't deal with anyone that promises jobs. That's not, nobody can promise you a job. I cannot promise you a job. You know, even legitimate people that are working in job search cannot promise anyone a job. That is up to the client, the job seeker, to do that work to get the job. Don't pay for information. There's recruiters. I just pulled up another article about an executive recruiter firm that was asking people to pay $2,500 to go ahead and set up interviews. You should not be paying to have access to jobs. That's not how that works. The recruiters get paid commission, and you don't have to worry about that. There's never going to be a money back guarantee about, you know, giving you the job. If it doesn't work out, we're going to pay you back. No, that's not going to be happening. And the urgency, again, that is one of the red flags that you want to be careful of. You know, you have to act fast. That's always a big red flag. And then working from home, as you saw from those examples that I just shared, you know, working from home scams that preys on people right now, especially because a lot of people are fearful to go out and work and be in the public. And so working from home sounds even more attractive to people right now, and that unfortunately is not going to be something that you can do if it's not a legitimate opportunity. All right, so here's just a couple more slides on different types of job scams. You want to also be wary of the business opportunities and self-employment claims. A lot of people think, well, hey, maybe I should, do my own business from home. But you got to be careful. Can you legitimately make a solid income, or is this just a lot of air, that people are talking about to make you respond and take advantage of an opportunity that may or may not be accurate? And then if you have to, take a job, but they don't need any experience at all, I don't know how many jobs there are where you don't need any kind of experience doing something. So again, never give out your private information. Be cautious when you're dealing with people out of the country. There seems to be some hot spots around the world where people are in calling centers. Although I will say that I did hear about robocalls. They've actually gone down during the pandemic because there's no call centers that are open across the world. So that has saved us from some robocalls. So there's one good thing that we can say about the pandemic. So when you're looking at emails, if you didn't reply or contact a company, why are they reaching out to you? Where did they get your information? I would, ask a bunch of questions before even responding. Research the company. And even just Googling companies and seeing if these jobs and positions are available, you could even contact the company directly to find out, is this a legitimate position? Because they just may be an imposter using the name of the company that everybody's heard of. So you have to be careful. So the phone calls, you're constantly getting phone calls, texts, emails. And again, I don't want to keep beating this into your head, but you have to really be careful, because guess what? If it looks too good to be true, it probably is. So this next example is this woman that I had mentioned that came up to me after the job club, and this is an actual, I asked her to send me this email that she received. And I've pointed out a few of the, if you really dissect this, there's a lot of red flags in here. So she gets this email 6 o'clock in the morning on March 21st. The interview is for that day at 10 o'clock. I don't know what company is that rapid, and all of you know that it takes forever to get a job, and this process is not fast. But they want to meet right away. They've got a lot of things about job boards. That's going to give you some legitimacy. You think, oh, okay, they saw my information. Maybe you did, upload your resume. Maybe you didn't. If you didn't upload your resume, then they shouldn't be seeing your resume. And they don't even have the position filled out. So that's a red flag. This is just a template. Then they want you to hang out with somebody who has a Gmail account. You want to be wary of companies that state they are a large company, but then they're using Gmail accounts. That's not usually correct. For any company, they're going to be using their company name. And then the schedule, again, is so urgent. It's that day, that morning. And then hope to read back from you as soon as possible. I don't think anybody writes that way. So, just be aware that companies are going to be using real domain names for their company. They can also spoof the domain. And the character, maybe there's one letter off, or they have some kind of underscore or something where it looks real, on a quick glance, it looks okay, but then you want to be careful again. These are popular tactics. And again, now we're using Zoom, Skype, Google Hangouts. You know, everybody's been going remote and virtual with interviews even more than was happening before. So you really want to be careful now. And unfortunately, that is one of the challenges with our times in the pandemic, is you want to be sure that people are who they are. So by using voicemail, you know, most companies will leave a legitimate voicemail message and say to contact them with their information. If there are hangups, chances are that is not a real number. They're spoofing it. And that allows the callers to hide their real phone number and then display another number and the company name. So it could look like, I've gotten calls, it looks like it's calling from a hospital. So you think, oh, somebody's at the hospital, I'm going to pick up this call. Well, and a lot of times you're getting recordings. These are robot messages. I will not speak to a robot. I'm sorry, I hang up even if it was a legitimate call. I'm not doing that. So, you know, you just want to be careful. They always are very threatening, and usually from some kind of a government agency. So you want to just hang up. So these are also some area codes that you just may want to be careful, because you don't need to dial an international number with these area codes: 809, 284, 649, and 876. These are Caribbean countries. There are, you know, a few countries that are so close to the US that they don't have to have an international dialing number, 011, before the number. So you don't realize that it's out of the US, and if you call back, you're going to have a big bill. Just be careful. And this is also where a lot of these sweepstakes and lottery type scams are coming from. But the more you pick up these calls, the more they know it's a live number, and the more calls you'll get. So just, you know, don't argue with them. Don't do anything. Just ignore them if you can, and just let it go to voicemail, because they're not going to leave a message. All right, so the last slide here before we take a quick break, I've got a poll that I would like to share with you. So what about if you already paid somebody, but you didn't get anything? So maybe you sent money, you didn't get what you thought you were going to from their promises. I would call the Federal Trade Commission and file a complaint. And the more you do this, obviously, the more information they have to possibly shut these down. They're wily. These are characters. They're out there. You know, who knows where? They could be sitting in a home next to you. You don't know. They could be overseas. We don't know where these people are, but they obviously have enough time on their hands and enough creativity where they could probably do a real job somewhere, but they're obviously spending their time harming and annoying people to no end. And there's a better way, but obviously they haven't found it. So they're preying on people like yourself who might be vulnerable. So you really want to be careful. All right, so let me just do this. I'll take a look at some of the questions that we have, if there's any questions I can answer. Okay, so we've got a few questions here. Okay, there's people that are sharing. Thank you. Upwork, I don't know if you, I think Patricia, you mentioned this. Upwork is a platform. It's like a gig-based platform for a lot of different types of jobs, and some people post a profile there. And I have been on that platform myself just to check it out. I think you have to be careful of who you're dealing with. Again, they are trying to gain information. You cannot rely on the company that is hosting these sites, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn or Upwork, to, you know, police everything. Indeed, you know, Are they responsible for people getting scammed? Well, they probably need a better process for vetting employers, you know, legitimate companies. But there's always going to be a few, you know, characters that are going to get around their system. So, you know, the onus is on you to make sure that you're in a legitimate opportunity so you can do your research. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. So Africa Anderson asked the question, how do you navigate safely, privacy, and deciding to keep your job seeker profile private or public? Well, that's the challenge is, you know, that one slide I think you saw, it looks like a billboard on the highway, you know, because if your public profile is out there, basically anybody driving by can see it. And there's also an archive of the internet, so they can go back and look at it. I mean, I don't know how many people are going to do that, but it is out there. And once it's out there, and we don't realize how much information is out there because it's all over the place. So what I do every so often, like on Facebook, Indeed, any place that I feel like I have information, I go back and I double check that my settings are what I want them to be. Because again, you know, once you have a job, do you really need all these people contacting you? Maybe you want to go back and close some of those privacy options down. A lot of people, you know, do want to be contacted about jobs and have found jobs that way. I think you just have to be very careful, you know, about what you're doing. So the ladders, I think Saad, you talked about the ladders in your question. They have premium memberships, and again, you know, you have to decide, is what they're offering going to be valuable to you? I don't think they're a scam, but again, what are they providing that you can't get for free somewhere else? And if you feel it's valuable, I think what they're mainly in business for, and this is for all the job boards, they are in business to have employers post jobs for them. If people get jobs, that's great, but job seekers are not paying to run those platforms. The employers are. So you got to think about where's their money coming from, right? And what's in it for them. And it may be a valuable service. I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I just want you to know their motivation is to get more employers, and if they need to dangle a few job seekers in front of employers so that employers keep advertising with them, well, that's what they're going to do. Is it going to be a legitimate job for you or a good match? I don't know. So a lot of times too, this information that's maybe been hacked and is out on the dark web. Marnie Abbott, you mentioned trying to confirm old information, like no longer used email address. That's also a red flag. This information could be sitting out there for a couple years because they feel like, oh, you learned about a data breach or a hack from some company that wasn't keeping track of your information very well. And immediately, you know, you might have put a credit freeze in place, or you might have had, you know, just more vigilance, setting up alerts, credit monitoring, whatever it might be. But a couple years from now, they can still use that information. Your birth date isn't going to change, your social security number isn't going to change, and they could still try years from now. That's what's terrible about this, is that once that information is compromised, and I'm sure we all have information out there somewhere. So we just have to be vigilant and be very careful. And I'm going to talk more about what you can do to protect yourself. So let me see if there's any other questions. Okay, Jill, I see your question. With COVID happening, could I trust a company that says I could train at home during the first month for a stipend of only $600 and begin work from the Chicago office as soon as the stay-at-home order lifts? Well, I don't know what the position is. You know, I don't have enough information about that, but I would research the company before you give them any information about how they're going to pay you, because that's where the red flag is. If they're asking for your bank account or your, you know, any kind of information that accesses your private personal information, your social security number. You want to be very careful if it's remote and you've never heard of the company. So you can confirm, you know, take a look at some of these sites, confirm the company name. Again, they're wily. You got to be careful. All right, Frank, same job from India-based recruiters, multiple emails. Well, there's telemarketers out there. These are not recruiters. They're just telemarketers, and they could be looking for a job to present, but they're probably just pulling jobs off of company websites and stating that they have this opportunity because they want you to send them your resume, which has your private information and a lot of background material. They possibly have other pieces of information on you that they can get easily. So I would just be leery of any recruiters that you're not familiar with, no matter what country they're coming from. You want to be careful because they get paid by commission. So if they're not an internal recruiter with a company who's being paid by a salary, they're trying to get the best candidate presented. A legitimate, you know, recruiter will be getting somebody, and I'll talk more about this, but you want to be careful because if they're just trying to get information out of you, it could just be a scam. So be careful. Yeah, so you'll find scams and just be glad that you probably identified, you know, that these scams are out there. You can report them, you know, if you're thinking this is pretty legitimately a scam, I would report them and the information. If you can take the time to do that, that's going to help everybody to know about it. The FTC received 101,000, over 100, almost 102,000 complaints of fraud from job searchers, and this included work from home, new business, employment agencies or recruiters, job counseling, and overseas work. So, you know, this is, you know, as you said, Tom, you know, this person is calling at 6 o'clock at night. Not sure that that would be happening. I agree with you. That would be a red flag. And why would they be asking you for your Social Security? You know, there's a trifecta going on. Like I said, it's the pandemic, so people are uncertain. There's a lot of jobs being lost. It's just a horrible situation for many people. Then these stimulus checks are going out, but they're not out there yet, so people are waiting for those. There's unemployment to deal with. That's not going smoothly in any state. Just be glad you don't live in Florida, because it's even worse there. I know. It's horrible. But what you want to do is, you know, just be very leery about giving any information over the phone. You know, they need to send you a letter in writing. The IRS is never going to call you. They're going to send letters. If government jobs ask for a fee, no, that's usually some kind of a scam. I don't think, they're all posted free at usajobs.gov or the state of Illinois or any state. They have a job process. Nobody's going to help you in that process. You have to do it yourself and interview. You have to get your own job, basically, is the bottom line. All right, so I'm going to click out of that. I hope I answered some of your questions. We're going to keep going here with a quick poll. Let me post this here. So you can take a minute and respond to this poll. Nobody can see who you are when you answer, just whatever you think. What scammers use to create a phone number that's familiar to you and it shows up on your caller ID? What would that technique be called? So again, you never want to give that information out to just some random person that's calling you that you don't know who it is. Again, it could be your neighbor, it could be somebody outside of the country. Who knows? And it could look like a legitimate call. And a lot of these companies are realizing that this is coming from within their own company. One IT person I read in an article was looking at his phone and it was coming from his own company, and he knew that it wasn't from his company. So correct, everybody has voted, and caller ID spoofing is the correct answer. So thank you for voting. Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and move on into the next segment here. Okay. So like we were saying, you know, this is just a really uncertain time, and a lot of the illegitimate opportunities are ramping up because they figure, wow, this is a great time for my scam. You know, this is where they're going, instead of trying to, you know, do something constructive. They're finding that scams are very lucrative, so that's why they do it. Now, if you're convinced that scams only affect a particular group of people, think again. Millions of Americans are targeted by scammers every year. And the most common are imposter scams, which involve, you know, individuals pretending to be someone of trust to get money or personal information from a victim. This could include, you know, like we've been saying, your social security number, access to your finances. So you want to lessen your chances of becoming a victim by looking out for common elements and just following these, you know, these tips to stay safe in the future. So we received this fraud alert from the Department of Labor, and this is all about, you know, scammers trying to get your information, your date of birth, because this is the information you need to file for unemployment benefits. And you do not need to pay anybody. You don't need to go anywhere else other than the unemployment website to participate in that program if you're eligible. So unfortunately, a lot of people though are, you know, getting these calls, and again, there's a lot of uncertainty. People are confused about everything, you know, what's going to happen. But if they start using your information, they can collect potentially on your account, and then you will have to unravel that if you try to file for unemployment. And nobody needs that when they're out of a job. So hopefully you can avoid that. So this next slide is just a banner from the Department of Labor. You know, they're never going to call you with information. These are any government sites. You know, they're just not. So the consumer alerts from the Federal Trade Commission, this is a lot of information. Again, you can always go back and check this stuff out when you receive the PDF. But it's very important, you know, you do not need to pay anybody to get your coronavirus stimulus payment. You know, if they're calling up and saying, well, you know, we're having a problem, you know, don't listen to that, because you don't know who's calling, where they're calling from, if it's legitimate. Unfortunately, the unemployment office is calling people back, and so many people don't respond that their claims are being held up. So again, sometimes you do have to answer a call, but they should identify who they are, and hopefully you can, you know, call them back on a different number. That's a challenge that I think some of these agencies are dealing with, because they have people working remote, they don't have designated phone lines, so it could be any random number, but it might be a legitimate call. So there's where the scammers win, because they know that this is all messed up right now. But you can go ahead and check these out, these links. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is going to help you, I think, just learn about some of these scams. I don't know if any of you remember, he's calling himself a fraud expert, but he was the guy that they based the movie Catch Me If You Can, who was doing all the check scams, and you know, he was quite a character, but now he's turned good. But this is a scam podcast on AARP, and you don't have to be a member to listen to any of this. You can just sign, you know, go to the website and listen to some of these different, but he does go into detail about how these scams work. And this is where there's an episode about Barbara Cochran, who's the Shark Tank star who got scammed once. $400,000 was sent to an account in Germany, but luckily her accountant caught it and the bank was able to stop the payment. And it was just a fluke that this accountant caught it. And then there was another scam that she describes in detail with this interview with Michelle Kosinski, who's an investigative reporter, and she goes into detail. They did a very elaborate scam, and it looked legitimate, and it's just a wild story. I really think you'll be entertained by listening to it, and just maybe find out how creative these people are. Hopefully they can find legitimate employment. All right, so this Fraud Watch Network is available to anybody. You don't have to be a member. Again, it's I think about $12 a year for you and a partner to join the Fraud Watch Network. So, you know, it's not a huge amount, but they do offer these services. It could be very helpful. They're open from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I would highly recommend you report some of these things that you're finding. And you, again, you don't have to be a member, but if you're receiving, you know, strange emails, texts, calls, but if you know someone that may not be up to date on all these things, you know, let them know about this as well. I think this is where the pass along information could be very helpful. So these are volunteers as well that can offer you tips and advice on this Fraud Watch Network helpline. It's a free service. They can help you take steps. You know, wherever you're at in this situation, they might be able to give you some steps because they've heard about a lot of these. They already know what to do. So this might be helpful. Now, if you have a loved one that's being scammed, you know, maybe there's some information that you could find out. I did know of a friend, a past coworker, many years ago. Her father was getting older, and he was replying to a lot of, they had this guy on a list because he would send money for lotteries and sweepstakes. It was just a really sad situation, and the family, my friend and her brothers and sisters, had to shut his mail down. They had to like basically turn off his phone, and he thought he had to comply with this, but he was basically, you know, getting duped, and he didn't realize he was being scammed. He thought he was going to win. So it's really sad. And not everybody, you know, doesn't matter what age. Sometimes, you know, you can fall victim to this no matter what, but this is where people find out more information. So any other questions about any of this that we've talked about so far? I'll take a look at the questions. Okay, Dawn, you're providing some good tips. You know, if you want to make sure the phone call is legitimate, ask them to send you an email with their company email address, and also look at their LinkedIn profile. Then you could also, for unemployment, they will leave you a message in the area where you update your weekly filing for unemployment. They will leave a message. But you just have to check your messages. I mean, we find this sometimes with our job seekers and with our clients that they don't check their voicemail. Sometimes you think, oh, it's just a bunch of garbage or it's those robot calls, but you know, you do want to check stuff every so often, and we get busy and we have multiple email accounts. I know it's a lot of plates to spin. But anyone, like Frank says, anyone can create a LinkedIn profile, and you do have to be careful because they will post a picture. They can just grab a picture, and I'm sure you've seen these TV shows about being catfished. They set up these romance scams. That's a whole nother, 3-hour conversation about that. But that is a very popular way. People need help, they need money, and out of the goodness of your heart, you think this is your soulmate, and guess what? Your bank account's drained and then they're gone. Bye-bye. So you gotta be careful. All right, there are apps. Yes, Dawn, thank you for sharing. There's apps, and there's also some cell phone, hopefully some advancements. Thank you, telecom engineers that we've been working with. I appreciate all of you and all the good work you do. And now I think they're addressing some of these issues through the telecom companies because it was a vulnerability. So Tamara asks, if your address is not on your resume, what can the scammer use off of you for scamming, since resume, surfing the web outside of scammers' requests for job hunting techniques? I'm not sure if I understand the question, but I think what you're saying is, your address is not technically required on your, there's different versions of your resume too, depending on where you're applying. Are you applying online to an ATS system? And we're going to briefly talk about ATS systems and how you protect your information on those. But sometimes the fields they're looking for are address fields. So sometimes on the ATS version, you do want that to populate in the employer's ATS system. But again, there's so many different ATS systems. You want to be careful though, if you're just, like, some people will put a PDF of their resume on their LinkedIn profile. How many people have done that? Lots. So right there, you've just broadcasted your home address, phone numbers, any kind of information, and anybody can look at that. So you just want to be careful, And something that you also want to be aware of is, there's a lot of information that they can pull from other places. So they don't need everything. They can pull all this information from many other spots. So you just want to be careful. All right, Charles is asking, what do you do for PayPal to keep popping up? I'm not sure what you're referring to. PayPal as a payment? For what? I don't know the context of your question, so I'm not sure. All right, we've got a question here. Should we focus on our experience and job history while looking for a job now, or grab whatever is available at this point? Well, that's going to depend. That's an excellent question, because a lot of people are, needing to put food on the table, pay their bills. There's some money coming from the government if it arrives, if you're eligible. There's a lot of uncertainty about a lot of things right now. We don't know how long we're going to be in this situation. So again, that might be a personal choice. I can't answer that for you. You could probably have a couple of survival jobs going if you feel that that's the way you need to go. And we do have on our website, worknet2page.org, there's always jobs posted, and there are companies hiring right now. We have a whole team on our business services side of the WorkNet2Page division that focuses on working with employers and trying to help them fill positions. So they are in constant communication, and they will post those jobs every day or so. There's new jobs posted, so I recommend checking those out. And then targeting the companies that you feel, again, we're going to have to pivot now. In February, I remember telling people in the workshops, this is the greatest job situation for you ever. But I also would say the pendulum can swing the other way. Well, boy, it like swung off, you know, into the wall. I mean, this is terrible for most job seekers right now. And what we can do though is we can pivot and learn to upskill and maybe pivot into areas. You know, you see some of these companies, instead of manufacturing t-shirts, now they're making masks. You know, there's different things that they're doing that they can make hand sanitizer instead of beer. You know, whatever they're doing, they're pivoting. And you may have to reassess and self-assess and just figure out, hey, I've got to, you know, make some changes here. All right, so thank you, okay, for the great information. All right, so now I've got a few more things. If I have, you know, there's some other questions here, but I'm going to have to move on because I know we're getting short on time here, but we're going to keep going. Anybody that needs to drop off, you'll get the recording and you'll get information, the resource guide that's attached to the PDF as well. All right, so this was something that we received just for our staff, and I thought I would pull some of this information out. I've added more of the information into the resource guide, but the United States Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, who even knew that this existed, but there is also a United Kingdom National Cybersecurity Center. And there has been an increase in these cybersecurity attacks using coronavirus or COVID-19 related topics. So these attacks attempt to persuade you to click on ransomware, go to a phishing website, download malware, you know, all these things. It could look like an innocent cat video, and I'm here to tell you I like a good cat video, but you got to be careful. Even my dog doesn't like it. So there's different apps on Android that are malicious, you know, and what they'll do is they'll say, you know, open this file, and they'll have subject lines, again, using this information with authority and urgency, you know, using emotion, coronavirus update, you know, outbreak in your city, emergency, you know, and so they'll spoof whoever you think is sending it, you know, from a trustworthy source, a government agency, or somebody might have a doctor in their title. Okay, right there, you got to be careful. Just kidding to all you doctors. 2020 coronavirus updates, you know, all this sounds so in new confirmed cases in your city, you know. Just be careful. Is the sender claiming to be from someone official, like your bank, doctor, lawyer, government department? They always pretend to be important people to trick you into doing what they want. You got to respond immediately. There's fines, negative consequences, you know, right there, that's a red flag. Do they make you feel something? Panicked, fearful, curious? You know, they use this to tease you into wanting to find out more. And then you click on it, and then, you know, you got a whole nother problem. And then also scarcity. You know, is this something in short supply that they want you to respond quickly? Again, that's more about urgency. And then current events, you know, again, they're always exploiting current events, big events. Tax time, that's another trifecta. That's like whatever is trifecta plus one. You know, it was tax time when this hit as well, and then that's been extended. So there's lots of things that they're using to get the hooks in you. So don't let them do it. All right, and this is a good slide. Just some different resources here. I see you guys are helping each other out. That's very nice in the chat. So we've got imposter scams. This is again from the Federal Trade Commission. Robocall scams. AARP had a whole series on this on their another podcast series that they have. And then the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is another agency that also is helping you with, you know, consumer financial laws, and they have some other good resources as well. All right, so again, be careful about the stimulus benefits and everything that they're advertising regarding, you know, your unemployment benefits. Make sure it's coming from a legitimate source. And then the census, you know, here we are being asked to fill this all out right in the middle of this pandemic. And this is only once every 10 years, but now is perfect timing for these scammers to say, hey, I can maybe, you know, roll this census into this whole mix that I'm using to scam people. April Fool's Day. I don't know why they picked that day, but they did. All right, so if you have any you know, questions about the census, you can always go to their website, 2020 census.gov. And what you want to make sure is that, you know, they could be showing up at your door, directing you to other websites, you know, sending you mail. You know, they're using everything they can to try to get you to do something. And they're going to be imposters, and they're hoping to adopt the mantle of officialdom to win your trust. And so you really have to be careful. And I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I mean, you really have to be careful because they're very creative, and it could be coming at you when you're vulnerable and you're not paying attention because you got a million other things on your mind. So I guess what you want to be careful of is that the mailings will always have a return address of Jeffersonville, Indiana. Okay, so that's their national processing center. If you receive any other mail and it's not from that city and state, Jeffersonville, Indiana, it's coming from somewhere else. And again, there's no questions that they will require your bank account, any kind of information for money, you know, Social Security, credit card numbers, no. And, you know, you're not required, you can certainly fill it out, and, you know, they want you to fill it out, but nobody's going to put you in jail for not filling out and answering questions. And traditionally, you know, you could receive an in-person visit, but they have temporarily suspended in-person interviews for some time in the future. So you should not be seeing anybody knocking on your door talking to you about the census. They're not legitimate. But you cannot be imprisoned for failing to complete it. So don't ever let that scare you. And then what you want to do as well is you can contact the regional office for your state. You can go and, you know, just verify that these communications you're receiving are genuine. And again, they could spoof the phone calls, make it look like it's coming from these different numbers. But you can call them back at the legitimate numbers and verify that it's legitimate. I know it's a lot of work on our end to deal with these scammers. All right, let me see. I think there's a couple questions here. All right. Let me just kind of wrap this up. So again, when, you know, it's uncertain times, emotions are running high, this is a fertile ground for scammers. So I want you to just be careful. And I just want to talk about briefly the applicant tracking systems. You know, they are going to have a lot of information on you, and they need that information to potentially, you know, hire you, but you want to be verifying that you're putting it into a system that's encrypting your data. Hopefully it is not taking that information and using it nefariously. So again, these are sensitive, personally identifiable information. They can be used in the hiring process. Again, this information is being stored, and there's several different systems, 400 and some different systems that are being used. But what you want to make sure is that they are secure. Sometimes it requires a password, but those might not be encrypted. If it is a company out of the European Union, a global company, they have to comply with those requests and have their ATS be encrypted, and there's a lot more privacy and security that are in place by law. But I would say that a lot of these companies are probably doing things that are leaving themselves open to, you know, losing your information or not making sure that your information is totally secure. So again, just be aware of this, be careful. And again, you're not in a public library and public, you know, computers right now, but you do have to be conscious that some of that stuff is available and has always been a source of people getting hacked. So again, these are, for example, some of the many big ones. They're growing by 60, I guess 60% of all companies have some type of applicant tracking system, and this is probably a little dated, so I would say it's probably 70% or more now. And for example, just one of these ATS systems, they post 3 million jobs and they process 75 million applications, and they have visitors to 4,000 different clients' career sites. So these companies, all this information kind of feeds into their payroll system, whatever, you know, you do have to comply with, you know, with starting your application process often. But we always teach you to go around those ATS systems and talk to people. 70 to 80% of jobs are found by talking to people. So that's where you should be spending 70 to 80% of your time. Online applications, if that's all you're doing, that is going to be the slowest way to get a job. And you want to go around those systems, use it as one technique, but it can't be your only technique. And we'll talk more about that in future sessions that we host. But this is just something I wanted to bring to your attention. But the EU-US Privacy Shield Data Pact for Transatlantic Data Transmission Compliance and Regulatory Requirements. There's a mouthful. So let's do a quick poll. I will share this poll with you. What do you think are the top scams that happened in 2019? Take a minute, and I think you can pick more than one. All right, we'll take a few more seconds to answer this poll. Again, this is anonymous. We're not saying who voted for what. It's just, it's interesting. There's a lot of different scams out there. And I just thought it would be interesting to see what you thought. Okay, so take a few more seconds and then we'll launch the results of the poll. Thank you for staying with us. There's a lot of information today, so I appreciate you staying with us. Again, you'll get the recording if you do have to depart. I understand. We'll have the recording and the information sent out to you in an email from worknet2page.org. All right, I'm going to end the polling. So let's see. Okay, so everybody thought that bank and credit card scams were the top scams for 2019. Well, you would be close. That was 74%. Actually, employment scams are the top scams in 2019, according to the Better Business Bureau, and 58% of you chose that. Sweepstakes, another high response, 52%. Business email compromise. There's just a lot of things that are out there, and again, we only had time for employment scams, but as you can see, it overlaps into these other situations. So we're going to go ahead and finish up the last part of the PowerPoint. All right. So this was kind of interesting. 2019, the states most vulnerable to identity theft and fraud. And look at Illinois. If you look in the center here, highest average loss amount due to online identity theft. We are tied with Minnesota, Connecticut, South Dakota, Rhode Island, and California. So evidently when they do, accomplish identity theft, they're getting a lot of money from our state, people in our state. So you do have to be careful. Now, New Mexico, Delaware, Wyoming, Kentucky, and North Dakota seem to have a lower average amount. So I don't know if it's based on what those people are doing, or I don't know how they determined the amounts, but it's probably what's reported. And I would think that many of this is not reported. I would say this is just a very small fraction of what's reported. And then age seems to be a factor as well, because you've got younger consumers, older consumers. You would think that maybe there's some bias there with the age or the amount, but it looks like actually the older you are, you might not be as likely to get scammed, but if you do get scammed, it's going to be for more money. That's what I took away from this. So it's just a lot of good information to be aware of. And then they have videos that you might want to pop over to YouTube and watch as well. And again, you're going to have all this information. I know there's a lot here. So the riskiest scams were employment scams, cryptocurrency scams, online purchase scams, fake check money order scams, and advance fee loan scams. But this broke it down. For ages 18 to 54, students and military spouses, employment scams were #1, or the most risky. And for people over 65 and veterans, travel, vacation, and timeshare scams. And for service members, online purchase scams. And then the most impersonated organization, Social Security Administration. So they are always being used as an official agency. So that should, definitely get your caution flag up, if not a waving red flag. So the problem too is that many seniors don't report that they have been scammed. And that's unfortunate. So here's how one of the scam works. I guess this is a common one. Amazon, everybody knows about them. So the reason is they've got a second headquarters they were in a search for, so they were in the news a lot. And I guess they reported only 24 scams being reported through the Better Business Bureau scam tracker. But in 2018, that jumped to over 500, and it's probably a lot more today. But what they do is they start, obviously, corresponding with you, connecting with you, posting jobs, saying it's a legit job, the pay's good, you can start immediately, don't even need an interview. And then, of course, you realize that the job doesn't really exist. But in the meantime, you may be asked to pay up front, you know, they may give you a check. And as we saw, this was somebody else that was being scammed that was actually sending out the checks, so they couldn't, you know, revert it back, you know, catch them. That's a job that the scammers need somebody to do. But they're going to ask you for bank account information. And at the end, I'm going to highlight something that's very important so that you can keep your bank account information very safe. All right, let's move to the next slide. All right, so again, don't use anything that will provide, provide anything that will help them use your information to get money or hack into any accounts you own. But if you are seeing that this is, happening, just go back and research. You can do your research. There's nothing that urgent that would stop you from doing research. All right, so this is just a quick review of last year, or 2019 or 2018 and 2017. As you can see, employment scams are still at the top of the list. Every year they kind of switch their MO because they know what works, and people are getting wise to some stuff, so they just move over to something else. And it's really just another version of the same thing. They're trying to get, they're imposters, and they're trying to get your, data points that can help them steal money from you or provide a way to represent you and get money. So again, these imposter scams, you got to be careful. These are what was advertised. I think this was right before the coronavirus, but these are, again, just same story, different name. All right, so if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. If it looks fishy, you want to be careful. And these are just some of the things that they might say. Again, this is if you've provided information to people because you've played along with this, sometimes, you think it looks legitimate, but you always want to verify with the organization through another way before going forward and clicking any links. And some of them look pretty good. They use logos, the emails, just like very similar. So again, you just have to be very careful. And then again, we talked briefly, but this is what a robocall is. And they're the #1 complaint from consumers to the Federal Communication Commission, and they have a website where you can report those. And then the Attorney General as well in Illinois, they have a consumer fraud hotline. You can look that up. But you want to keep your antenna up. I hope some of this has given you the right information to be more equipped to identify scams, because they're going to come at you when you least expect it, or you don't think you're going to fall for it. But you just have to be very vigilant and careful. But share this with people. Let people know that this is what they're doing. And again, older Americans might not report a fraud because they don't know how to report it, where to report it, they're ashamed, or they don't even know they've been scammed. And a lot of seniors are isolated right now, and sometimes, they may need help. They may need errands or things, and they may be reaching out to people that are nefarious, and you may want to just help them. If you know anybody that needs that kind of help, maybe take some time to reach out to a neighbor or a relative that might potentially fall prey to that. Because we all know job search is a job, and it takes time and effort, and it's not going to happen with a quick phone call. But I do want to highlight just one thing. We see this a lot at our agency with some of our client emails, and they use their name or a version of their name, and they have some kind of a birthday or relative, some kind of a date in their email account. I really strongly want to recommend that you don't use any kind of numbers unless it's obviously not a birthday. You could use one number interspersed or whatever. That's more for a password. And some people use that because it helps them remember their email, especially if they've got multiple emails. But I want you to realize that you're giving that information out. You know, you forwarded that bunch of jokes that you saw, you forwarded that out, and probably somebody put that in a CC, and you don't know where that's going to go. First of all, they have your email now. Plus, they might say, oh, they've got a birth date in their email. I bet I could, you know, dig up a little bit more information on this person on the dark web, and they could $1.25. I mean, it's not much. They can buy your information and then potentially target you. And so you want to change your password. The most common password is password. And that is not a good password because it's probably very easily connected. Okay. Again, this is just something to do. Change your passwords frequently. You know, you may have a password service. You may want to save them in your browser. Again, just be careful, because if they do have your password, they might not even need your password, but if they have your email and they contact your bank and they have enough pieces of information, they can get the password changed, they can get your address changed. A lot of things can happen really quickly with just that one email if it's tied to your bank account. So just be careful. All right, I think I've said enough information for today. I hope all of you have a lot of good new ways to watch out for scammers. We're going to go ahead and give the code for anybody that is working with one of our counselors. Just let them know that you attended today. And I'll let Jim talk a little bit more about this and the upcoming workshops.
Yes, thanks, Jennifer. This code is for those of you who have filled out an application and are working with our career counselors, either for training or have been approved for a job search boot camp. One of the requirements when you are working with WIOA, Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, is to maintain contact with your counselors and to let them know when you're taking part of our workshops, you know, at least once a month. So this is for the counselors to know that, yes, you attended today, and it's scam 302, scam 302. And all you have to do is email your counselor, and that lets them know that you've attended today. So that would be that. Thanks, Jennifer.
Sure, I'm going to go ahead to the next slide, Jim. If I can get to it. I've got two mouses I'm dealing with here, sorry.
Okay.
The virtual job club, we've got some different ones coming up that you may want to attend. Do you want to talk about these, Jim?
Sure. Connor Kaneen will be talking about staying sane and motivated during these times of chaos. That will be next Friday, May 15th. All of these are at 9 a.m. May 22nd, I will be doing job search, research, plan, and act, how to kick off your job search, how to keep track, and things like that. Megan Straza, she is from the Veterans Administration at Hines. She will talk about how to find a federal job. That's May 29th. And then June 5th, I will take survival. Each one of those letters stands for something. Guide for the job search wilderness. So I will be coming up with more June workshops. That would be it. Thanks.
Right. Thank you, Jim. Thanks for everyone for attending and for your patience. I know it was a lot of information, and like we said, we'll be sharing all this with you. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and I will take a look at the other questions, see if there's anything else I can answer, but I'll go ahead and stop the recording now.